Hi, my name is Prince Porky, and this is going to be the Luigi's Mansion 3 BTT commentary. I just wanted to share what this run is actually about, how a bunch of the tricks work, and why certain things will never be done in any percent. So just keep in mind that this run is basically going to be a spliced, segmented run of all of the best sections ever performed. Most of them have been performed in runs, but a lot of them, particularly the ones made by myself or other people, have been recorded specifically for this BTT. So the first thing that you're going to notice is that at the bottom, it's going to be switching mostly between myself and Twisted Elf 6966. That is because we're pretty much the only two people currently speedrunning the game at a top level. You will see a couple of other people throughout the run. And also, we're going to be playing in European French. This saves about 2 text boxes over English, but the language will switch a couple of times just because of where the clips were recorded in. Just know that the primary version that the game should be played in is European French, and for the purposes of the BTT, those are the text boxes will be skipped. So the first thing you'll notice here is that we're going to be opening every single door at their handle, and that's because if you don't open a door at its handle, Luigi has to slowly walk over to the door's handle at 1/3 his normal movement speed. So very, very slow. So we always want to make sure we're opening doors at their handles. Same thing for pressing elevator buttons and stuff like that. Anything that has a prompt where we specifically need to be in a certain position. Right there, as you just saw, I went into both Mario and Peach's room. You have to do that in order to progress the story, which a bunch of people think we just do that for no reason. The music here is also going to be based off of what music would be playing during the actual gameplay. I did the best of my ability to match it, so I hope you enjoyed that part. Another thing to know is that on the Switch 2, there are loading differences. For physical, which is the game we're playing on, the physical load difference from Switch 1 to Switch 2 is about 1 minute and 4 seconds. So, very, very important. Yeah, so up ahead, we're going to be starting the actual moments of gameplay, and we're going to get into the first little mini optimization of B1F. This floor is filled with a bunch of micro optimizations. So right here, we're going to be turning around right here, and when that towel scares us, it's going to push us in the direction that we're not facing. So instead of pushing us away from where we're going, it'll push us towards where we're going. Pultiput right here is going to show us how to use the vacuum once we go to the next room, which is basically going to be the fundamental moveset that we work with throughout the majority of the run. Another thing to know is that we're going to be running on version 1.4. We're going to be running on version 1.2.1, my apologies. The reason we're running on this version specifically is because it makes one specific boss fight faster, that being Amadeus. They patched a skip in that boss fight that allows you to basically skip the whole thing. So that's the version we're going to be running in, but most of these clips were recorded in 1.4 just because that's the version that most people play on, including myself and Twisted Elf. Right here, we're going to be bursting whenever we do one of these move tutorials during Pultipup's tutorial, because basically we're skipping celebration animations, which is a common theme you'll see throughout the entirety of the game. Celebration animations happen a lot through the game, and there are a couple different ways to skip them. I'll point them out whenever they happen. So right here, we're going to get to the first piece of new tech that we have in our arsenal. Right now, we don't have the 2 most broken pieces of tech, that being Luigi and the plunger, but we can still make do with what we got. So if you use the flashlight and then release the button and then press the burst button 1 frame later, Luigi will have the burst activate, but the burst won't actually come out, as you just saw there. It looks like he just flashed it and then the trash can exploded. So what happens there is called a flash cancel burst, or FCB for short. And that happens if you flash and then burst 1 frame afterwards. This is going to be the first ghost fight. Most ghost fights are consistent in this game in the fact that we know exactly where the ghosts are going to spawn. So right here, for example, this second part, we're going to know exactly where the ghosts will spawn, and we can line them up for an easy double. Another thing to know that the game doesn't tell you is that you can actually slam 5 times instead of 4 if you press A as soon as they hit the ground. The game never tells you this for some reason. Also, right there, we just bursted to overlap an animation of celebrating with bursting open that little table right there. Just a neat little time save. But yeah, so always make sure you're slamming 5 times because that just makes the slams faster. Right here, we're going to be grabbing our first key. Keys, whenever you grab them, can play one of 4 animations. I believe the longest one is 5 seconds, and the shortest one is about 2.5 seconds. So, very much RNG whenever you grab a key. Of course, in this BTT, we're going to be getting perfect key RNG for every single key that we grab. Another thing right here, now that we have the Poltergust, where if you notice, we're going to be walking in perfectly straight lines, because if you walk in a straight line for more than 2 seconds, Luigi starts sprinting, and sprinting is obviously much faster than just walking. For some reason, there is no sprint button in this game, unlike the one that there was in Dark Moon. Here, we're going to be doing another beautiful manipulation on the goobs in this boss, in this fight right here. We're going to run to the left, and that's going to line the goobs up perfectly, and then we're going to do a very difficult flash and aim it at both of them to grab them immediately. Normally, we want to walk a bit more left before doing that flash, but this is a BTT, we don't have time to be doing that. Right here, we're going to be doing a skip that I don't even know how to explain. For some reason, this just randomly happens where you don't get startled by Polterpup, which is what should happen, and you're just able to walk after freezing in place for a moment. Don't know why it happens, but it can happen, so I had to put it in. Now we just unlocked the Dark Light device. Not really a useful device for the purposes of glitching and stuff like that, but it is useful because it allows us to save EGAD, which I guess we have to do. I'm also going to be assuming that you know the basics of the story of this game, so I'm not going to really explain many of that throughout the run. Right here, we're going to get to our first dialogue mashing sequence. Whenever we're mashing through this kind of dialogue, we're just going to be mashing the minus button as fast as we can, or whatever button we have mapped to minus. For certain text boxes, which you'll see soon enough, you actually want to mash the button in a rhythm, and that will be when you have to mash the A button. As you just saw right there, we did not FCB that second trash can. For some reason, that trash can does not instantly break if you try FCBing on it, and so therefore FCB is actually slower on that one specific trash can. So right here, we're going to skip that dialogue box so quickly that we skip one elevator cycle and get out of the elevator about like 2 seconds sooner. For some reason, we're allowed to keep running after that painting scare, which is unavoidable. So here we're going to have the first boss go Steward. We're going to run up to him, flash, and then we're going to do what's called a one cycle, where Steward, if you burst him, he becomes vulnerable, so we're just going to burst him after slamming 5 times, and that allows us to regrab. We're also going to slam up 4 times and then diagonally down right once. This lines us up in the perfect spot to immediately grab the buttons that he's going to shoot out, instead of having to wait for the 10-second long celebration animation. This is perhaps the most consistent boss fight in the game. So right here is a minute of mashing that I'm just going to fast forward through, but as you can see here, the text boxes are going to be skipped really quickly. You actually don't want to mash the A button as quickly as possible. You want to mash it in a very specific rhythm. Otherwise, literally what happens is you'll mash slower if you try mashing as fast as you can rather than in the rhythm. I don't know why it works that way, but that's just how it works. So we're just going to double speed through the minute of mashing so that we can get more back to the fun stuff. EGAD in this cutscene is also going to be giving us the suction shot, otherwise known as the plunger. And that's going to be a very useful tool in our arsenal once we get Luigi. So very useful, also going to be playing a big role in 5F, the next floor that we have to get to. Now right here, we're going to be doing more of that mashing that I was talking about. And for the purposes of speedrunning, we have these little splits on the left, as you can see right here. And these show the different segments of floors. These splits change as soon as you insert the button like that. So, as you can see right here, 9:29, that is the time that we have for the first section of B1F. The next floor is going to be 5F, and you can see the order in descending order on the list. The list will change over time as soon as we get to new floors. So right here, we just have some dialogue to get through, and then right there in the elevator, if you saw, I moved really quickly with the joystick, it's actually because if you use both the joystick and the D-pad, you menu twice as fast in the elevator, so that just makes it so that menuing through stuff is just a little bit quicker than it would be otherwise, because we menu through things really slowly if you only use one. Also right here, while I didn't show it, you're supposed to stand in the top right corner of the elevator, not for any particular reason that matters for speed, but just because it makes this cutscene glitch out right here, which you'll see momentarily. I didn't stand in the corner because I forgot to put the clip in, but this is what happens if you stand in that corner. The camera just kind of pans to the hallway for some reason. Pretty funny, that's why I included it. So right here, we're going to be using the suction shot for the first time to destroy a thing. Egad's going to call us, and then, if you can see, there's a little trolley in the background right about here. So this trolley is going to move off screen, and it's going to drop a bunch of its junk with it. And so that junk is going to hit something, and then that's going to scare Luigi. That rat in right here, so that rat normally scares Luigi as he passes over it, and because we got that scare early, which is random, we save 2 seconds. This runner's name is Coopery. You'll be seeing him a couple of times. He just has some really, really fast clips from back in the day that are still on top of their game. Right there, as you just saw, we kind of moved through the hallway really quickly. That's a tech known as ghost surfing. It's not really going to be used anywhere else, but for this one specific hallway, it's very, very useful. Another triple by aiming up and slightly to the left. And now here we're going to be going to Chambria, the next boss ghost. Chambria has a pretty simplistic one cycle where basically you just keep putting on a plunger and then just slamming her towards the corner over and over again. But what's interesting is that once we get to the end of the one cycle right here, we're actually going to be pushed really out far to the side. I don't know why this happened, and it's only happened a handful of times to me and Twisted Elf. But as you can see, he just kind of gets launched over like this, and that means he's going to be standing right where the suitcase gets launched out of, so we get to perfectly just be in line with it. So that as soon as the celebration is done, which also thankfully turns us towards it, we can just press X and immediately get the cutscene. That suitcase contains Luigi, who is the single most broken part of this game. Now, the one thing you need to understand with Luigi is that in this game, Luigi, he's tied to what's known as the physics seed. So whenever you boot up the game from the home screen, a randomly generated seed is made in the game, and that seed alters the physics engine. So whenever we do a run, before we actually start, we have to make sure that we have a good physics seed by testing it in various places so that we can do what's known as Luigi pushing. Also split right there for 5F. Luigi pushing is by far the single most broken tech in this game, as you'll soon find, and you cannot do it without having a really good seed, so we always have to make sure we have a good seed before doing runs. Runners will often leave their game on overnight or something like that, just so that they don't lose a particularly good seed that they've been sitting on. Another thing about these elevators right here is that, for the most part, all of them load slightly quicker, and that's why version on the Switch 2 version of the game is way faster than running on the Switch 1. That's just because of the elevator load times, as well as a couple of loads in the B1F. So right here, we're going to be learning how to use Luigi, and for the speedrun, we're going to be learning how to break the game with Luigi. So right here, if you vacuum against a corner, you can do what's called a Luigi push, where Luigi vacuums, Luigi stuns him with the flashlight, that turns Luigi into an object that can be pushed around, and then you can squeeze him through tiny gaps in collision. That's how Luigi pushing works. Very, very useful and very, very broken, because it allows us to do a lot of the things that the developers definitely did not intend. Gonna skip through this boring stuff once again. Also, that menuing right there in the laboratory also uses double speed menuing. This is mostly just gonna be perfect lines and stuff like that. So here we've arrived in 3F, which is basically what I like to describe as the Luigi tutorial floor. Right here we're going to be doing a cool strat. So this stall right here contains something that's going to scare Luigi and give him what's called spook speed. So we're going to grab the key like this, we're going to open up the stall, the key's going to go, we're going to grab it, and then this stall right here is going to scare Luigi. That's going to cancel the key animation and give him what's called spook speed, where he runs really quickly. Now the great thing about spook speed is that it allows us to go through doors instantly, which saves about 2 or 3 seconds per door. So whenever we can get spook speed, we always want to make sure that we're able to grab it. And there's a ton of like diegetic things in the background that can give us spook speed, so the environment that we play in is just as important as the actual level itself, which I think is quite cool. Over here, we're going to be grabbing this key right here. Now, when we grab this key, Luigi tries to check whether or not it matches the hotel shops. So, like, for example, this one has a spade on it. He would normally check it, but instead we're going to go around the trigger. Then we're going to spawn Luigi, move Luigi over here slightly, and that makes it so that we can go past the second trigger where Luigi would check to make sure the key is on the correct shop. That kind of skip you wouldn't really know about unless you kind of played the game. Right here, we're going to hit that register to manipulate where the goob is going to spawn. Slam it 4 times, slam the last one into this goob. Now, the reason we slam it into this goob once is so that when we flash these two, this guy is right next to Luigi, and so that means we can instantly grab both of them, even though the other one is far away, because you can instantly grab ghosts as a pair. Best key RNG, once again, we're going to move with Luigi, and then we're going to move Luigi out here. This floor has a lot of multitasking, which is why I'm having to talk, like, fairly quickly. So right here, we're going to the heart shop. And in here, we're going to be doing a rather difficult tech, where we're going to be introduced to a new type of ghost, that being the mini-goobs. These mini-goobs, normally we beat them in 3 flashes, but if you set them up in the right spot by standing right at this corner that Luigi is standing at right here, and then you go down right, you can flash them and then get these 2 right up there, as well as all the rest of them, so you can do it in 2 flashes instead of 3. Also, this table, I have no idea why it's shaking here. That's just random physics jank that this game has. You'll see it pop up occasionally. So right here, this cutscene is going to freeze us in our tracks when the spirit orbs decide to possess the register, but we can actually hold out the dark light device during this cutscene and make it so that as soon as the spirit orbs possess this thing, it'll just instantly start getting dark lighted, even though we're technically not able to move yet. Spirit orbs also have a little bit of RNG in where they spawn, but as you can see in that clip, if you get really good RNG, you can suck them up really, really quickly. Right here, we're going to be getting best key RNG, and this one's super important because if you get the best key RNG, you're able to move before this fight starts, and that just allows you to get next to this goob a little bit closer, and so that means you don't have to walk as far once we burst him and then flash. We're closer in distance. Right here, we're going to be setting up a nice little trick. We're going to break both of those tables, grab both of these 2 mini-goobs, burst him, and then that sets up for a beautiful, just gets all the ghosts at once. Then we're going to swap back, hold out the plunger. So whenever you hold out the plunger in this game, it skips the celebration that normally happens after you beat a ghost fight, which is why I hold it there. Now, that's very, very useful, and you're going to be seeing it quite throughout the run, but the other thing that can skip ghost fight celebrations is going through doors, which you might have noticed back earlier in 5F. So, most of the time, we're going to be canceling celebrations by going through doors rather than just, holding out the plunger, because holding out the plunger is slightly slower. There's one other way to skip celebrations, but it's a bit niche, and I'll bring it up later once it actually becomes relevant. So right here, we're going to get the final key, and then we're going to fight the hammer, so I'm just going to speed past this a little bit. This is not as far away as you can probably grab the key from, but that'll be fixed in the next version of the BTT whenever that comes out. Right here, we're going to walk past this key because it doesn't actually check if you've grabbed it, it just checks if you go near it. Here, we're going to push Luigi up the escalator. If you push him too far, the game can crash, so I pushed him just far enough to make sure that doesn't happen. It's also important to despawn Luigi when we do that because we're going to be fighting a hammer up here, and Luigi will actually be the player we're controlling if we don't despawn him, so it's important to make sure that you despawn him. We're going to spawn Luigi, we're going to manipulate the hammer to go right here, and then we're going to double tether it. Since he has 2 tethers instead of 1, you can double slam him. Most people don't really tend to figure that out, even though it's like a pretty obvious indicator from the game. This is why Luigi is so useful. Luigi's probably the most used button in the game because he just allows you to just speed up the ordinary gameplay a lot. So right here, we're going to have our third boss ghost, Cruller. His one cycle is pretty easy. You just vacuum right here in this corner, send out Luigi. We're going to do an FCB right here to flash him. Now, normally, when you try to flash him, his glasses will prevent you from doing it, but the FCB, the burst comes out first, so the burst will take off his glasses, and then the flash will happen, so that he instantly gets flashed. Then we're going to slam 4 times, we're going to burst, and then we're going to flash him again. That allows us to re-grab him without him disappearing. Then we're going to slam down right on the final slam, and that puts us in this position to grab this button right here as soon as it comes out. Now, once we grab this button, it's imperative that we skip the cutscene and then swap over to Luigi so that we can position him right here. We're going to aim for this little violin right here. We're going to shoot it, grab the thing. So once we grab that, the plunger's going to hit that violin, it's going to snap the strings, and that's going to scare Luigi. So that scares him out of the animation of him grabbing the button, and that gives us just enough time to get spook speed through that door as well. Right here, we're going to be doing a Luigi push with a plunger hat. Plunger hatting gives you way more height when doing a Luigi push, so in any time when we need more height than we can get with a normal one, we do a plunger hat. Also right here, I'm going to be shooting a plunger as I fall. If you shoot a plunger right as you fall, you won't take the fall stun animation, which normally happens when you fall from a great height. So that's just going to cancel that animation out and save us a bit more time whenever we fall off of something. Most falls in the game are going to be canceled with a plunger because it saves just so much time over taking that fall stun animation. So now we're going to be doing 2F, which is one of the less consistent floors that the game has. But since this is the BTT, it's going to be rather quick looking because when optimally played, this floor can be very, very quick. So right here, if you notice, we're actually going to be sprinting out of the elevator by lining up at the corner and then running out to build up a sprint early. That's just a tech that we do whenever we visit a floor we've already visited. So right here, we're going to destroy the sign with Luigi and then immediately despawn him, because if you slam something with Luigi and despawn him, it instantly breaks, which saves more time than if you were to just like slam it with Luigi or Luigi normally. And then we can instantly go through that door the moment the sign is broken, because all it cares about is that it's broken, not that it's actually out of Luigi's way. So right here, this floor has a lot of weirdly unskippable cutscenes where you have to watch Polterpup, like, eat a baguette, as you can see right here. I don't know why this happens, but it is kind of funny. So right here, this ghost fight is the least consistent ghost fight in the game. What we're going to try to do is walk over here and then flash as many ghosts as we possibly can. And then this, I don't know how he got so lucky. Basically, it's just the ghosts are all perfectly lined up to be able to get them all in just 2 tethers, which is insane. Anyone who's played this game at a top level speedrun knows how insane that is. Now, Chef 1 cycle is a pretty fast 1 cycle, so I'll do my best to explain it while pausing. So we're gonna put Luigi in front of this frying pan right here. We're gonna grab the pumpkin as Luigi and we're gonna shoot it at the pan. Now, whenever you shoot something at him, he becomes vulnerable, so we're gonna re-grab the watermelon for later, flash him with Luigi. We're going to slam him 5 times, specifically 3 times on the stove, because every odd slam on the stove does 40 damage instead of 20 for some reason. We're going to shoot him once again as soon as he gets out of the vacuum with the melon, and then we're going to flash him with Luigi, because that allows us to grab him with Luigi faster than if we flashed him with Luigi. Then we're going to slam him 5 times on the stove. Mid-5th slam, we're going to sprint over here with Luigi, and then we're going to swap back right before Chef gets killed. If you don't swap back, then you have to sit through the celebration animation, which is really slow. So that little swap sequence is not really used in any percent because it's very, very risky. So right here, our elevator button is just in our grasp, but oh no, it gets stolen by a rat. So now we have to go and chase that rat. Also, as you can see, there's certain sections where you have to run while blind. Now, normally right here, we do something, but instead I'm going to make the cheese fall. I'm going to spawn Luigi right about here, and I'm going to run over to this trash can. He's going to flash this, and the thing is, normally cutscenes teleport you, so in this game, Luigi would normally be teleported right to where this button is, but if you open the trash can first and then trigger the cutscene, you can actually get teleported right back to the trash can because that takes priority over the cutscene teleporting you. That's known as CTC, or cutscene teleport canceling. Another thing right here, this hallway is pretty long, And whenever you fall out of bounds in this game, it warps you to what's called the default position, unless you've auto-saved in the room. So what we're going to do is, we're going to do a Luigi push to get out of bounds right here. This is known as a down warp. Very, very difficult, never going to be used in any percent. And that's going to root us to the default position right there to get through that door. It looks like it saves a ton of time rather than having to walk there, but in reality, it only saves 10 frames, which is pretty funny. Down warping is very difficult, by the way, and that clip I just showed you took about 4 hours to record. Normal ghost fight stuff, this is all pretty standard, just making sure you hit the right thing. Now these cabinets in the background, it's RNG where the rat's in, so obviously we're going to guess it right on the first try. And then right here we're going to do the same thing we did on the sign back at the start where we despawn Luigi to instantly break the locker. I know he appears right here, but that's just because of the splicing and how the BTT works. But trust me, he gets despawned to break the locker instantly. Right here we're going to be doing what's called a startle skip, where if you spawn Luigi, it passes Luigi through that startle trigger, which would normally happen. That startle trigger would normally startle Luigi, but since we're not actually controlling him as he passes through it, he doesn't get startled. Now this is all going to be pretty standard, just flash the rat, get that, go over here. Another thing to note is that, like as you saw right here, I did sprinting. There is a tech known as stutter stepping that a lot of Luigi's Mansion 3 players that speedrun the game will probably know about. For the purposes of this first BTT, I decided to ban the use of stutter stepping and instant sprinting just because it feels like they would have murked it down a bit more, so they'll definitely appear more in version 2. So now we're done with the second floor, and we're going to be heading to the fourth floor, which is where the first, like, really, really major skip of the run starts. Everything up till now has kind of been, like, mostly tutorial land, as I like to call it. But first we have to go through a cutscene of Luigi buying a gold bone, which is basically just going to be a bunch of useless crap. So I'm just going to skip ahead to when we actually enter the fourth floor. All that happened there is that we got a bunch of useless items that we don't need, like the gold bone right here in the top corner. If you see that change, by the way, that's just because of the splicing and the segments it recorded in the BTT. We're not actually like losing and gaining gold bones at all. So right here, we're entering the fourth floor, which is going to be the Great Hall. EGAD's going to call us, and then we're going to get stopped in our place by a cutscene right about here. Now, I know some people think you can try to, like, spawn Luigi during this cutscene and have him move, but unfortunately, that doesn't really do us any good, so we're not going to do that. Right here, normally what we would do is we would burst over this thing, and then we would spawn Luigi right about here and have him trigger this ghost right there to give us spook speed for once we go out the door. But we're not going to be doing that, and you'll figure out why we're not going to be doing that once we finish this boss fight up. Skip past this cutscene. Oh no, Toad is captured. By the way, that Toad is the red Toad. In the speedrunning world, that Toad is known as Greg. The reason for that is because a speedrunner named Grove wondered if Toad was a last name or if it was a species name, and so they decided to name this Toad Greg. Greg will be appearing later on in the speedrun during an escort mission, so it's nice to just have a name for him when the other two Toads are like literally useless and don't even get a name because of how little they appear in the game. Right here, this is pretty much just an auto-scroller with music and stuff like that, so I'm just going to skip past it all. But right here, we pushed onto the stage. We're going to spawn Luigi up here, then we're going to put Luigi right here. This is to set up a quintuple on these 5 goobs. So we're going to flash, bring him, a lot of multitasking in this fight, slam downwards, go up, spawn, and then go over here. That lines all 5 of them up perfectly. We're going to drag him over to the door. So this door right here, in 1.4, they put a gate on it, but in the older versions, it doesn't have it. So you can actually go through the door and then do what's called this, where you get an autosave, and then you get another autosave. That saves the game, and so we're going to be resetting. For some reason, if you reset during this boss fight by getting an autosave in the room, Amadeus gets just deleted from the game, which I think is pretty funny. Also, you're going to notice sometimes there are splits that appear here. That's just because one of the runners plays with splits in their actual gameplay. Nothing I can do about that, so just kind of ignore it. So yeah, Amadeus has been deleted from the game, and then the button is just going to appear. So we basically skip the entire piano portion of the boss fight, which is about 2 minutes of time save. We're going to have Luigi camp Toad's painting, and then we're going to grab the button with Luigi right here, so that we can instantly start this cutscene. So right here, instead of activating the ghost, we're going to do yet another down warp. This one's really hard because the corner we have to push in is not really big, and all Luigi pushes have to be done against corners. So we get warped to the elevator. Whenever you do a down warp in an elevator hall, it usually brings you right back to the elevator, so it's going to save a lot of time whenever you down warp in an elevator hall. That's going to be the end of the 4th floor, and now we're going to move on to the 6th floor. Now, the 6th floor is probably the most broken floor for the purposes of speedrunning, mostly because we don't actually play it. We're going to be skipping this entire floor with the single biggest trick in the run. But first things first, we have to push through a gate at the start. Now, this gate is pretty infamous in the community because it was basically discovered that you could push through it, and then they didn't implement it for 2 years because they didn't think it was consistent. So this push is known as Red Mountain Skip because it was found by an LM1 runner named Dread. And basically, the backwards version of this push, the name is quite funny, but we're not going to be seeing it, unfortunately. But in case anyone is curious, the backwards version of that push is called Red Mountain 2.5 HD Final Goo Push Remix featuring Luigi from the Luigi's Mansion 1 3DS remake. Right here, we're going to be pushing through this gate. Now, this gate is normally the gate that opens up after the boss fight is finished. So we're just going to be basically going through the floor backwards, and right here is the boss arena. So all we have to do is push through this next gate and get a very cool looking slingshot across the room as we do it. Slingshots happen when you hit your head against a ceiling and have a bunch of physics momentum that are kind of random, and they just launch you across the place. You don't lose any speed in the air, so that's why it just kind of keeps launching you forwards. Right here, this is the hardest one cycle in the game. You have to frame perfectly re-grab this plunger and press A as soon as you grab it, otherwise you'll let go of it again. So, very, very impressive right here. Normally we flash buffer it in the run to make it slightly more consistent, but we're not doing it in this clip, which makes it even harder. Another thing you're going to notice is that Luigi right here is going to be vacuuming, and the reason for that is because when we drain his HP, Luigi's going to be basically helping us drain HP by draining it from afar like this. So basically that just allows him to get to 100 HP slightly quicker, and then obviously we're going to put Luigi here to camp where the button's going to spawn. I forgot to mention this, but this guy's name is McFrights, and he's already dead. As you can see, very quick floor. We basically skip the entire, like, I don't know, 9-minute long puzzle that this floor normally has. So, very, 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 very important skip. Biggest skip in the run by far. And then, instead of doing Red Mountain 2.5 HD Final Goo Push Remix featuring Luigi from the Luigi's Mansion 1 3DS remake, we're actually going to go over here and do yet another down warp. Do a janky push through the floor. Get warped here. That little freeze happens because of the difference between the two rooms. We're going to warp to the elevator, and then we're just going to go back in. Now, I know what you're thinking. No, not every single floor has a down warp in it, unfortunately. Floors like 7F would be really useful if we did have one, but not all of them have good enough corners to push on, and 7F in particular has grass that slows us down, and that slowdown effect actually makes it very, very difficult to get a Luigi push at all. So, needless to say, downwarping in 7F is not going to be possible at the end of the floor. But this floor is very, very broken and very fun to watch, so it doesn't really matter. But the entrance theatrics are a bit long, so I'm just going to speed past it. This scare right here is impossible to skip, in case you're curious. There's nothing you can do to get around it. This floor is very much built around what we call event flags, which basically make it how the story progresses. So you basically can't skip anything in this floor, otherwise the event flags will think, oh, you skipped one of them, you're not allowed to progress in the floor. And I'll show you a bigger example of that and why we have to deal with the event flags once we get later in the floor. So right here, as you just saw, I did another FCB on the door. Anywhere where you have to burst something that isn't a ghost, we're going to be using FCB because it's a lot faster than just doing a normal burst, and by a lot, I mean 0.6 seconds. Another beautifully manipulated ghost fight, and then we're going to go through the door. This also skips a celebration, like how the plungers skip a celebration. Nice FCB here, by the way. So right here, we're going to be mashing the B button to quick turn and then go upwards and spawn Luigi to skip a startle. That allows us to go before that pineapple would normally hit us, and we get through slightly faster. In this room, we're going to be pulling this thing over to the toilet, and then we're going to be doing a very cool strat with this slinker. We're going to basically manipulate where it goes, because it goes to whichever Luigi you're not controlling. We're going to flash it, and then we're going to get a cool double tether right on him like here. And that just allows us to kill him in 3 slams instead of the normal 5. Double tethers do 40 damage instead of 20. We're going to burst him, we're going to FCB him, and then we're going to burst him again. This hammer, just like the last one, is going to be killed. We always want to slam under 160 HP because double tethers can sometimes make the game lag. Also, once again, holding out the plunger right here to skip celebrating. Double tethers cause quite a bit of lag, so if you slam any more than 160 HP, you'll have to do it in 5 slams instead of 4, and doing 5 double tethers is quite hard to do because the lag makes it so that the 5 slam trick is a bit harder to do than normal. So we always prefer to get him just about to 160, and then we start slamming him. This is going to be the first grabbable item of the game. They're not really noteworthy outside of 8F, but this chainsaw is pretty fun to use, so I thought it's worth mentioning. Right here, for some reason, sometimes when Luigi gets freed, instead of taking the fall stun, he'll just fall down and he won't get stunned on the floor, and it allows you to move before the celebration. Don't know why, but it's kind of random, so whatever. Move Luigi up here to manipulate a quad. Very clean. Also, if you couldn't tell, Twisted Elf is going to be doing a lot of the ghost fights because he's the best person at the game. And I'm going to be more focused on, like, the really janky and, like, difficult speedrun tricks that are, like, never going to be used in any percent. So right here, we're going to go over here instead of going to the leaf roll. This Luigi push is never going to be used because it's very, very, very hard, and if you fail it, you fall all the way to the bottom of the floor. So definitely never going to be used in any percent, but a very cool trick that saves, I'd say, around, like, anywhere from 7 to 12 seconds. Now, we have to go into this room because of the event flags that I was mentioning earlier. So this cutscene right here, you're not allowed to skip. And if you don't go into the room, the game just breaks and you're not allowed to progress. So we go right into that room to get the story progression, and then we immediately head back out, do a blind Luigi push, and then right here, we're going to be setting up a very difficult slingshot that's only been hit once to warp up top. We're going to move with Luigi during this cutscene, which you normally can't do, to open up this leaf. If you don't open up that leaf, once again, the event flags will basically say, no, you didn't progress through the game enough, and then you're not able to get the button out of this flytrap. Do another plunger fall stun cancel. Attach both plungers to the one side of it instead of one on each side, and then open it up to officially trigger the boss fight. This cutscene is also not skippable. If you try to go down without watching it, you just simply will not be able to trigger the boss fight. Like I said, this floor is probably the most fragile floor in the game. Right here, we're going to go over here, and then we're going to walk back to manipulate where the boss goes. He's going to go over here, going to try to eat it, and then we're going to basically grab him. For this one cycle, we're going to flash. We normally would slam him 4 times and then do a regrab, but in the BTT, we can do a very hard-to-do 5-slam regrab by flashing him just as he hits the ground. We then have to drain his HP without being able to see him, then flash 5 times, or slam. Gonna grab the watering can from Luigi, and then we're actually going to despawn him so that he doesn't get stuck in the celebration animation. We're gonna give the watering can to Luigi, and then we're gonna despawn him as he waters this plant, which makes it grow slightly faster than it would if you watered it with Luigi. Don't know why, but it's just slight time save, so time save is time save. This push might be used in runs eventually, it's just you have to get it first try or else it doesn't save time right here. It skips climbing down the leaf ladder. Very cool floor all in all. If you could down warp right here, you would save a lot of time because we have to run all throughout this hallway, but unfortunately there's no place to really do that. Very sad. But now we're good to go to the 8th floor. Paranormal Productions. Just like 5F, if you stand in this corner, the cutscene will get slightly broken and the camera will pan over to the hallway right here. As you can see, it'll get panned right over to here. So right here, we're going to be doing a Luigi push that'll never be used in any percent. The reason why is because this looks like an easy Luigi push, but there's actually a huge invisible wall right here. So we're not actually pushing over this ledge, we're actually clipping slightly through the wall in what's known as a side warp. So Luigi pushing normally can't be used to clip through walls, except in very specific circumstances. So this side warp is very difficult, takes about 3 hours to do. Never going to be used in any percent, but still very cool. Also, as you saw back earlier, we shot a plunger after we pulled open the key. When you shoot a plunger after pulling something, it allows you to move quicker than if you were to just sit there and wait for the plunger pulling animation. So you'll be seeing that whenever we have to pull something. Right here, we're just going to be flashing these TVs because we have to get them all flashed to set up for later, once we have to start juggling items around. So right here, cool little spook speed strat, burst these toy cars, that's going to scare Luigi and gives a spook speed through the door. Right here is going to be another example of the plunger canceling that I was talking about earlier, so we're going to hit A and then we're going to plunger to be able to move slightly sooner. We're going to do a plunger suck, which makes the vacuum extend vertically slightly more than it normally would. And then we're going to move the torch right here. The torch is counted out of bounds, and then it's going to warp it to where Luigi is standing. Now right here, we're going to want to pay attention to not actually Luigi or Luigi. We're going to pay attention to the torch right here. So we're going to drop it, and then as Luigi is going here, we're going to grab it with Luigi off screen. That warps it to where Luigi is standing. So this cutscene, we have to fight against the hammer and 3 goobs. And in this fight, the main reason we have to do this fight is to light the torch on fire. So if you watch the torch carefully right here, we're actually going to get it kicked over by these goobs. It's going to get launched into the fire. This is something that's like very physics dependent and very RNG kind of heavy. We're then going to do what's called an item fling, where if you turn with Luigi and then despawn him mid-turn, the item he's holding will get flung. So, 2 very, very cool looking strats. Only one of them is used in any percent. The item fling is consistent. The torch kick is definitely not. Then we just kind of do the hammer, get another kick. And then, this is called slam stun. If you let go of a ghost while it's on the floor, as so long as it's not a bossed ghost, you can just re-grab the ghost. Grab the torch right here after canceling the celebration. And now we can go get the megaphone. We're going to leave Luigi over with the torch, and once again, we're just going to grab it as Luigi's going into that thing. So right here, you're going to notice we dropped off the torch right here. We're actually, you move faster if you're not holding an item, so we're going to vacuum it towards us instead of just grabbing it immediately. And then we're going to item fling the megaphone out here, have it go perfectly over to here, and then just grab it on our way out. Now, coming up is the kaiju fight, which is a pretty, I wouldn't say complex fight, but it requires a good understanding of the game mechanics. We're going to spawn Luigi early so that we can get this early flash here, because Luigi can't normally move right away. We're going to do what's called an instant hit, where you burst him as he's forming the fireball, and that just makes it so that it instantly hits him. As you can see, there's like little blue sparks on his costume now. That means we got the instant hit successful. Now, if you instant hit him right as he forms the fireball, you'll get what's called a dupe, where he gets instant hit, but the fireball still forms. Also, that was an FCB. So that dupe allows us to duplicate the fireball and skip the entirety of phase 3, which saves about 40 seconds. We also flash this ghost slightly early, so that all we have to do is grab him rather than flash and grab. It's very hard to get that flash on the ghost because I think it's like slightly close to frame perfect. It might be a couple of frames, I'm not entirely sure, but that flash is very precise, timing-wise. Now we're going to be going to PK, to PK2, or no, to PK1, sorry. So Polterkitty has stolen our elevator button, as you can see right here, and she's not going to give it back to us until we get out of the Polterkitty section, so very, very annoying. It's basically just a bunch of backtracking, but there are a couple of cool techs in this backtracking section, so I'm just going to speed past most of it, and then just comment on whenever there's a cool tech that's used. So right here, the plunger has auto-aim, but not for this specific ghost fight, so we actually have to manually aim that shot to get the fight to start slightly sooner, and then do a very difficult manipulation involving a lot of multitasking with Luigi and Guichi to grab all of these mini ghosts, grab the goob, and then slam it right here towards where this ghost is going to spawn. For some reason, he gets, like, teleported. I don't really know why. This is just a fight manipulation. Very, very cool fight. There are plenty of ways to do that fight, but that's obviously the fastest. That shot right there, completely useless. It's just having a bit of fun. Now, she's not going to actually jump. She's normally supposed to jump, like, right up here on top of the building. But if you do this in a certain way, she won't actually jump, and she'll just stay right where the bench is. So that just allows us to slam her earlier and just speed past this part. We also flashed her one frame before she actually did the peekaboo animation, and that's the earliest frame you're able to actually flash her on. So we're going to be doing that all throughout the entirety of the Polterkitty section. Now right here, when you turn this wheel, it lifts this thing upwards, but the distance you go from turning the wheel actually can be as far as you need for the vacuum's range. Also, we're going to flash her the maximum distance away from Luigi's flashlight. So this puts Luigi as far away as he possibly can be from the wheel. We're going to burst this rat right here as she goes into the floor. That's going to scare Luigi, and he's going to go through this door. Now right here, we're going to be mashing the Luigi button because there's one frame where you can spawn him, which is called an instant spawn. If you get it, you can go over here, dark light this trash can, and for some reason, dark lighting it means that the ghost gates that normally block you from progressing just won't appear. So you can just ignore this entire fight for some reason. The other good thing about that is that it gives us spook speed, and it makes it so that once we beat these two goobs, we're not going to celebrate because the game thinks, oh, there's still a ghost fight going on with a trash can. So that skips having to wait for a celebration cancel, and then we can just menu directly to 7F. Right here, it was just a splice. We can obviously move there, but I had to splice there for the Switch 2 loads. Another little startle cancel, nothing too noteworthy. If I've already talked about something, I'm probably not going to talk about it again unless it's like something cool. We're going to drop Luigi here. That gives us spook speed for these mini ghosts right here. As you can see, we're getting spook speed all throughout here. And sometimes, very, very rarely, the spook speed can last long enough to get through that door. FCB the leaves. Flash her. And then this is pretty standard. We're just going to wait in a specific spot to manipulate where she jumps to. Now's a good time to say, if you haven't watched the BTT, by the way, that was another instant spawn. If you haven't watched the BTT in its entirety, I recommend watching the full thing because it's very, very good, and I spent quite a lot of time on it, so any and all watches of it are very, very much appreciated. I always love every single time I get to see that someone new has watched it. Right here, we're going to be doing a melon strat. Normally, we have to break this big melon, but instead, we can aim upwards with Luigi, and that means when he shoots the plunger, for some reason, it'll gain a bit more height and be able to hit the watermelon over the bathtub. Right here, she has two positions that she can go to. She has to go to the right for this specific room, because if she goes to the left, we have to deal with the big watermelon in the way, which means we lose a bit of time. But of course, since we have the BTT, we get whatever luck we want. Now we just wait here for where the button goes. Now we're going to be using a technique known as plunger yeeting. So we're going to goo push right here. This roll, by the way, is not unrolled because we didn't unroll it back in 7F. So we're going to push here, and then if you notice, Luigi is holding a plunger. Now when you hold a plunger against a wall, it kind of like forcefully shoves you out of it because your hitbox gets extended. It ejects you from the wall, and since we're in the air, that ejection speed is not going to go away, so we get flung across the room. Plunger yeeting is going to be used in a couple more spots throughout the run. I'll point it out whenever it pops up, but it's a very, very cool tech, and I love that it exists. So that's the end of Polterkitty 1. Obviously, backtracking is not the most enjoyable thing to watch, but hey, it's something. For future elevator sections going forward, I'm probably just going to manually skip them because even fast forwarding takes a bit too long. So right here, we're going to run off to the right side instead of the left. We're going to do an startle cancel, then we're going to push through this curtain right here. This curtain normally has a force field on it that prevents us from pushing through it. It'll like push us backwards. But if you get a very, very, very far side warp, you can just barely push past the force field and skip the curtain. And what's cool is that the curtain loses all of its collision once we beat this boss fight. So we don't even have to worry about pushing it through it on the other side. Now we're just going to do a bunch of dino manipulation stuffs right here. Phase 3 is pretty cool, but you've already seen it, so not much to say other than we want Luigi to end the boss fight right in this spot in the middle. And that's because it manipulates the ghost phase of Ugg, so that as soon as Ugg spawns, he'll do a big slam immediately. Whereas if we don't do that manipulation, it's kind of luck-based. So right here, we're going to do probably one of the hardest one cycles, aside from our Mega 1 cycle on McFrights. We're going to drop Luigi, we're going to let him pull him, then we're going to slam him 3 times, flash, and then re-grab. That's about all there is to this floor. It's a very, very short floor. 3rd shortest floor in the game, so not much all to talk about. This toad does not have a name because literally this, until we bring him back to the elevator, is the only slice of gameplay that he'll actually appear in. So yeah, curtain has no collision. It disappears right there because of the splicing once again for the BTT. And then we specifically have to touch this part. Now, whenever you rescue a toad, you can normally click anywhere on the elevator, but this specific one, we have to go to the button. And I don't know why. It's just probably because the game was programmed by multiple different teams and not all of them programmed it in exactly the same way. Now we're going to go to B2. So after this cutscene, we're going to do a Luigi push to get on top of this bench right here. Now when you slam something, obviously it gains height, and so this is just such a creative looking skip because of course that's how it would work. But your brain just kind of doesn't register it. Nice little plunger fall cancel once again. This ghost fight is very impressive looking. But other than that, it's all pretty much standard. Just grab those ghosts up there while Luigi's going through the pipe. Move these things as Luigi does this. This floor has even more multitasking than 3F in terms of using Luigi. So we're just going to skip it and go straight to the next portion of the run. Yeah, so right here, we're just going to spin this thing, and then we're going to, importantly, we're going to push this thing with Luigi. That's going to scare him and give him spook speed for this portion right here. Nice little spook speed strat. And then we have a bunch of cutscenes to get through. And now we have a glitch that's going to be very complicated to explain, so I'll try my best to explain it for anyone who's, like, new to the game. So we're going to do a Luigi push right here to skip walking down this ladder. We are going to vacuum when we get the X prompt above our heads. And then we're going to drop Luigi. Now, we're going to hold the flashlight and the plunger button, L and R specifically. We're going to hold R first and then L. Now, that's going to, once we swap, Luigi's going to get pushed into the water. We're going to be holding down right the whole time. And then we're going to drop out of this thing. Now, the reason we have to hold both L and R is that it buffers the dark light to get out of the ducky on the first frame, and that's what puts it through the floor. Now we're going to just do some careful maneuvering out of bounds, as you can see on the map right here. And that's just going to let us go all the way, skip the entirety of this sewer section, which saves, like, I don't know, a minute or so. It saves a lot of time. Drop Luigi. Actually, no, we don't drop Luigi. That's just editing stuff. So yeah, right here, we're going to be going through this pipe a couple of times. Now, when you go through a pipe in this game, if a slinker grabs you as you're going through a pipe, it'll instantly take you to the end of the pipe. So we're going to drop Luigi, the slinker is going to grab us right as we switch, and then that's going to instantly bring us to the top of the pipe. Very cool looking thing that's quite easy to miss. And then we still have to deal with this ghost fight, but no, actually we don't, because all we can do is just push through this gate, and that's kind of it. Right here, we're going to shove a plunger up against this wall to get another plunger yeet all the way across here. One of the cooler looking plunger yeets, if I do say so myself. And then these mini hammers are going to give us spook speed, so we don't even have to burst the shark goobs that we normally burst. Nice little handy thing. Keep running with spook speed. And they're also going to give us spook speed through this door and this door. Now, this slingshot right here, I don't actually know why it happens, and it's only happened once in the entirety of this game's history, so I really don't have an explanation for it. It's just kind of one of those physics things that can just sometimes happen. It's just jank. Right here, we're going to be facing off against Clem. This is a pretty technical boss fight, so I'll do my best to explain how it works. So we're going to get close to him so that he tries to attack us, and then we're going to go far away by using the exhaust. Then we're going to get close to him again right as he attacks. Grab him. Then we're going to pop our own ducky. Spawn Luigi. Shoot a plunger, which makes it so that he's going to be able to be re-grabbed. We're going to slam 5 times once he gets to 280 specifically, or around that range. And then we just mash the flashlight button, and that should, in theory, allow us to re-grab him, assume you did it correctly. Drain him to 100, and then we're able to slam him 5 times. Now, right here, there's quite a lot of easy things to miss right here, mostly to do with Luigi, so we're going to pull this thing, and then Luigi is going to go over here. He's going to use the vacuum to move this bomb right up here, and that bomb is actually going to trigger on Luigi before Luigi gets there. That way, as soon as he climbs this ladder, he'll instantly get, like, defeated off of it by the bomb and just skip having to climb down the ladder. That bomb manipulation with Luigi is very, very hard to do because you can't actually see what you're doing, and you don't want it to explode too early. Another beautiful little false stun cancel right here. Gorgeous. And then that's the end of the floor. This table doesn't actually respawn. Once again, this is just BTT editing stuff, splices. Hopefully the next BTT we won't have to deal with that thing being in there. More beautiful double speed menuing coming up right here. Oh, that was really good. So now we're going to go to 10F. So 10F is a very boring floor, so I'll definitely skip past a lot of it. But right here, we're going to be doing a little startle cancel right here, where that torches appear. That normally startles us, and it was debated whether or not it was faster for a while, but ultimately it was proven that yes, indeed, it is faster by just a little bit. Once again, just going to speed through it. This floor is pretty much played exclusively casually, so there's not much to really talk about, and most of the stuff is pretty self-explanatory for the purpose of, like, speedrunning. So if you already know the game, you'll already know kind of what we're doing. We're just going to vacuum this right here. So right here, we're going to do a very, very hard strat that'll never be used in any percent. We're going to drop Luigi, line Luigi specifically up here, and then get scared so that he gets sprint speed, and he rocks perfectly underneath the arrows to barely go past them without having to solve the puzzle of actually disabling the arrows. Very, very tight squeeze. Very not something that can be any percent viable. Now, the rest of this floor is played pretty standard, but there is a couple of things I do want to explain, just in case anyone gets, like, confused while watching it. So the first thing is, this gem ghost right here is going to spawn from this sarcophagus. The reason we're spawning this gem ghost is so that whenever we beat a ghost fight here, number one, we don't celebrate, and number two, it's going to give us spook speed through every single door in this room. So very convenient. A lot of FCBs right here. But you'll notice we don't FCB on the middle one, and the reason for that is because it doesn't matter how quickly you flash this middle one, because a Slinker is going to be spawning. So we're going to FCB this one, and that's going to perfectly manipulate the Slinker to spawn right in front of us. So that's why we don't FCB the second one. Now we're just going to skip past most of the floor, because it's honestly a very boring floor, and it's pretty much just played casually but slightly faster. Right here during this fight, it doesn't actually matter how quickly you do this fight, because the sand in the room is rising slowly, and it's just an auto-scroller, so if you see, like, the gameplay here is not really that good, but it doesn't matter how quickly you actually do this room, so that's why it really doesn't matter, and that's why this gameplay looks quite unimpressive, even though it technically is good. Right here, the gem ghost, we have to keep it in place, and you can shoot a plunger on it to keep it in place, so we just go through that door. One more spook speed from the gem ghost, and then bada bing. Now that's pretty much the rest of this floor done. Skip past most of it because this is the longest floor in the game, and it's also the most boring floor in the game, so just wanted to speed past it a bit. So right here, we're going to be doing Serpsy. Now, unfortunately, you can't do this sand head part in one phase because the game is literally just programmed to not let you. So we have to damage Luigi on here to get her to do an attack quicker. We'll drop Luigi, get hit by the attack on purpose to bring her up out of the sand quicker, and then for some reason, sometimes she'll just randomly instantly go into her ghost phase. So we're going to carefully drop Luigi, slam 5 times instead of 3, which is what we normally do in any percent. We're going to vacuum, and then we're going to do the 1 cycle on her. Now, there is technically a faster way to do the 1 cycle with Ugg's 1 cycle, but it's not really feasible for the BTT, and also she sometimes gets stuck in the floor, so I don't actually know if it saves time or not. But very importantly, we end this fight exactly where the button is going to spawn, which is very, very, very hard to do, and usually is not done in any percent. So very, very clean Serpsy fight. One of the cleaner boss fights that I would say this run has to offer. Now we're going to 11F, which has quite a lot of easy to miss things in it. So I'll do my best to cover it all as quickly as I can, but there's a lot, so I might have to pause sometimes. So right here, we're going to go downwards to manipulate where these ghost orbs are going to spawn, with Luigi right here and Luigi right there. So they're all going to spawn right here, grab them all, go through the door. Right here, we're going to vacuum this thing, and these swords are going to come out as a result. That's going to give us spook speed through this door. Trash can's going to give us spook speed through that door. More really good spirit orbs. Then so right here, we're going to dark light the trash can. We're going to spawn Luigi so that he gets sucked up, and then we're just going to dark light it again. Dark lighting it triggers it earlier. We're going to aim upwards with Luigi and then vacuum, and that's going to grab all the spirit orbs instantly because of how we manipulated them with Luigi's standing position. We also flush the toilet right here. There's no practical purpose for it, but I like to imagine that it gives you good luck for the rest of the run. Right here, normally we burst open this thing as this cutscene triggers, but we don't have to do that because we're just gonna, instead of going around here during Polterkitty 2, we're just gonna goo push up. So we don't have to do that in the BTT version. Obviously, we would never do that in a run because this Luigi push is very, very not consistent. Right here, we're going to dark light this with Luigi instead of using Luigi like what we normally do in speedruns, because if you use Luigi, you can quickly swap and grab all of them, and using Luigi is quicker than using Luigi. Right here, we're going to manipulate where the bunny jumps by going upwards, because once again, grabbing an item is slower than walking normally. So then we're going to flash the bunny. He's going to be in the corner so that we can manipulate where the ghost orbs appear. We're going to pull that cloth, which is not only going to skip the key animation, but also give us spook speed out this door. So right here is just pretty much standard stuff. But that is pretty impressive looking if you've played the game before, so I just wanted to point it out. This hat right here, you can walk inside of it, and then it'll just kind of snap you to positions, so that's just a neat little, like, micro time save. Right here, this is going to give you spook speed. If you quick turn with the B button, though, you'll actually get this ghost fight to spawn, and we don't want that because we can skip this ghost fight by doing this push right here. So don't quick turn when you're in this room if you plan on skipping it. It's not really an any % viable trick, but maybe one day it will be. We also spawned those gold ghosts in there to get spook speed out the door. And we're also going to activate this trash can in just a moment right here to get spook speed out this door. Then we're going to get one of the cleanest ghost quads you'll ever see in your life. That is so not easy to do, and it looks so clean. Right here, this hammer spawns in already vulnerable, so we don't even have to flash it. We can just walk behind it and just grab it instead of having to flash it first, which is pretty funny. So that's pretty cool. Right here, we're going to spawn Luigi and stop moving for just a second. That's going to skip the startle that normally happens right there. Don't know why we have to stop, whereas most startle skips don't require us to, but hey, whatever. Right here, we looked through that hole. That's going to make the ghost gates disappear. If you time it slightly off, you'll soft lock the game, so make sure you time it correctly. Ghost gate's gone, so we can just spook speed out of here. We also spawned those gold ghosts in that room earlier. Those gold ghosts are going to give us spook speed on the way out. Another clean-looking fight. Now, Nikki, Lindsay, and Ginny is played pretty much completely straight to how a speedrun would play it, so I'm just going to skip past this, like, 3-minute fight. Right, and here's where the magic of 11F happens. We've been setting up a bunch of gold ghosts and stuff throughout the floor so that we can do this. We get 1 spook speed from the trash can right over there. This is the only door where we don't get it, and then here we get spook speed from these gold ghosts that we spawned by standing on the stage. That gives us spook speed through this door, trash can gives us spook speed through this door, and these gold ghosts give us spook speed through this door. It's just such a clean floor how it all just, like, weaves together in such a perfect sequence. Now we're going to be going to B2R. I know the button says 12F, but we need to go get an upgrade first, so I'm just going to skip past all of the boring dialogue that says, "Hey, Luigi, you need to go rescue Toad and get an upgrade for me." Right here is a very cool strat that Coopery found, where you can, instead of, like, putting a plunger and having to do this trash can fight normally, you can actually just not, instead of pulling the plunger, you can get the trash can stuck on another trash can, and as you can see, that's much faster than having to, like, pull it and then get the ghost orbs to appear. Right here, this ghost fight, we normally manipulate it in a different way, but for some reason, in this one clip, they just got extremely lucky and were able to just get the quad without having to do the normal manipulation strat, so very weird quad, but also very clean quad. Right here, we're just going to be rescuing good old Toad. We're going to burst this box through the wall so that when Luigi arrives, Toad will walk towards him. And then, so right here, we're going to be doing a difficult strat. Normally, we have to, like, trigger this, like, fan right here and then rotate the thing to go grab this. But instead, we're going to grab Toad. We're going to do a blind shot to hit that thing. And normally, the auto-aiming likes to hit this, what's it called? Normally, the auto-aiming likes to hit this ladder instead. Afterwards, we're going to go up here, do a Luigi push on this chest, spawn Luigi right here, and then have him shoot a plunger. Now, because we're wedged in between collision, that just allows us to upwarp and then have Luigi slip through this cage and then go grab the upgrade. There's a chance this could be used in any % eventually, but not the way we do it in the BTT, that's for sure. We're then going to do a trick called Slinker Skip. Normally we use Toad as a stepping stool by going on top of this, like, drawer right here, but you can just push through this corner instead, which is a bit riskier, which is why we don't do it. We're then going to be doing a burst-assisted Luigi push to get even more height, and then plunger fall cancel once again. That fall cancel allows Toad to teleport here, which is better than if he were to try to run towards us normally. We do, like, a small little plunger yeet, which brings us to normally about right here. And then run past here. Flash that before Toad's dialogue box appears. Grab this thing from Toad. Now for speedrunners of the game, normally when you go through here, you have to wait a second before you're able to go through the door, but instead of doing that, if we despawn Luigi as soon as this light turns on, then this thing will start rotating and we're just able to instantly go through the door rather than having to wait a few seconds. I don't know why, but despawning Luigi seems to be the reason. Nice little ladder skip right here, just because why not? Also because it's faster. Never going to be used at any percent because that push is not consistent in the slightest. And then the rest of this is pretty standard apart from the Slinker fight, so I'll show that off and then I'll skip past it. Yeah, so we manipulated a double right there. That's pretty much all that I have to say about this. These two Slinkers. Also, right here, I hit X about, like, right in this position so that, you know the slow walk I talked about at the start of the game? If you don't press a door at their handle? That slow walk allows us to skip the celebration that would normally be here without having to hold out the plunger so that we can click this button slightly sooner. Just a little, like, making use of the game mechanics type thing. Also, if you notice right here in this elevator, we're going to high-five Toad. There's no practical purpose to doing it, but I thought, why not? So that's why I high-fived him. Right here, there's going to be a cool little Slinker fight where we just grab a double and then double tether him. Beat the rest of these mini-goobs. Now, because we did this hallway so quickly, the game thinks, oh, wow, you did it way quicker than I expected you to. And as a result, this cutscene right here, which is where we split for B2R, this cutscene gets messed up, and instead of being where he's normally supposed to be, Luigi stands at the door. I don't know why this happens, but it looks very funny. As you can see, he just kind of like hands him an invisible Luigi. Very, very funny looking, so I'm glad that that's a thing. No reason why that happens, by the way. It's just a thing that this game has. Just like a lot of things, this game just has random nonsense. So now we're going to go to 12F. That upgrade we just got, it gives us two things. Number one, it allows us to slam 7 times instead of 5, which is a huge buff that the game never actually tells you about for some reason. The other thing it does is gives us super suction, which we just used right there. We're never going to use it again, which I think is very funny. But yeah, that's the whole reason why we needed that upgrade. And no, you cannot just Luigi push through that boat because of the event flags that I talked about earlier in 7F. Right here, we're going to spawn Luigi up here, and then grab this thing, and basically how that works is Luigi being here allows us to manipulate these barrels that are not here yet. If I hold left right there, this barrel will get duplicated and drop way quicker than it's normally supposed to, and that just allows us to do this part of the fight slightly quicker by grabbing a duplicated barrel instead of waiting for one of the Slinkers to toss one. He doesn't even get a chance to move. Now this one cycle is one of the most broken one cycles in the game. We basically have to break his AI in order to do a one cycle because he's supposed to be a scripted boss fight. So if you grab him at the same time his HP ticks over to 200, his AI will break and you're able to do a one cycle. So we're just going to slam at 160, 261, slam 3 times. That gets him down to exactly 201. And then we basically just stand 20 frames away from him so that once we drag him, he perfectly reaches the tether at exactly 200 HP. That just allows us to do this. His AI is now broken, and we can just slam at 140 to instantly get all of the slams. Spawn Luigi after the slam is done to push Luigi right where we need him to be, which is like about right here. This cutscene is one of the only cutscenes where I'm just like, why is this not skippable? It feels like they just kind of forgot to put a skip button on that cutscene for some reason, because it definitely feels like it should be skippable. Right here, we're going to free the other Toad that doesn't have a name. I don't know why, but Greg is the only important Toad, as you saw in B2R. Now we're done with this floor, and we're going to go over to 13F. 13F has a lot of cool ghost fights and one very, very easy to miss strat. So right here, we're just going to be manipulating ghosts once more like we always do. Nice little quintuple right here. Grab the key with Luigi, have Luigi go to the door. And then what we're going to do right here is we're going to hold A. That makes this fight happen slightly sooner than it normally would if we didn't. I don't know why. Another little cool little fight manipulation right there. Now for some reason, if you hold the B button, which I forgot to explain puts you into sidestep mode, you actually just completely skip this fight that's supposed to happen here with these hammers. It's very funny, and it's so easy that I'm wondering how they missed it. And right here, one of these machines contains a key. It's random which one it is in for the purposes of any percent, but obviously since this is the BTT, we know it's going to be in the first one. But we're actually going to go over here with Luigi and flash this thing 3 times. Now, on the third flash, it's going to spawn a bunch of ghosts that are going to give us spook speed, but only if we're looking at them. So once we get the key, we're actually going to vacuum this thing so that it pans the camera over to these treadmills and allows us to see the ghosts over there. That gives us the spook speed. Very, 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 very clever spook speed strat. Also definitely not any percent viable, because if you guess wrong as to where the key is, then you won't get it. Right here, we're going to do 2 startle skips. We're going to open this chest again to cancel the little key grab animation. I don't know why this is the only key that you can skip that way, but hey, I'm not complaining. And then we're just going to go through 2 more quick ghost fights. This ghost fight is very, very impressive right about here. This fight is going to be very impressive looking because there are so many ghosts here. This is like the most ghosts you'll ever fight at once. And it's just perfectly all manipulated to be like that. I think that ghost fight could be a bit better. Right here, we're going to be doing a cool manipulation tech with Johnny where he's going to try to shoot at Luigi, but we're just barely fast enough to outrun him and get behind this pillar. The rest of Johnny is played pretty safe. We burst those open because they're going to block the door. Drop down with Luigi. Have him vacuum him. While he's vacuuming him, we're going to climb down the ladder. Flash him. Slam him. Go right here because that's where the button's going to appear. And then finish off slamming him. Like that. That just allows us to grab the button without having to celebrate first. So, very important to do that movement. Now we're going to be going to PK2, which is a pretty boring floor, so I'm just going to, like, pretty much skim past most of it and only point out things that are, like, particularly noteworthy. So, at the start right here, we're going to be going here. We're going to burst this open. The reason why we have to go down here with Luigi is because this fight only gives us spook speed if we go down here first. So that's going to give us spook speed through this door and through this door. So that's why we have to go down that drain. Skipping further ahead. We're going to do an early flash on her by flashing like that. If we aim up and aim exactly like we are doing right here, then we'll get her to spawn slightly sooner. Skip the entire 12F portion because it's very, very boring. Spook speed through this door once again. Multiple startle skips, and then right here we're actually going to be doing a tech where we're going to startle skip, drop Luigi right there, have Luigi move here while Luigi's doing like this whole little sad animation, and then we're going to just dark light this trash can to give us spook speed for once the sad animation is finished, and that just allows us to get to running speed slightly quicker. Ghost fight happens in the elevator, but we don't really care. Interestingly, though, that these gold ghosts are still going to be here, since we never defeated them, which is pretty cool. And we're actually going to be doing our best to keep them alive throughout this Polterkitty fight, so that they can give us spook speed throughout both of these doors. Goo push up onto the stage, and then make sure you slam her and end with Luigi Gooigi right here. That way you can grab the button as soon as she's defeated. So once we grab the button, we're going to get spook speed through both of those doors, and also get spook speed through this door, because these two are also still right here. That's about it for PK2. Very, very boring floor, so I'm just going to skip past most of it once again. Now for 14F, we're going to spawn this fight right here, flash him so that he doesn't get in our way, and then we're going to goo push through this gate right here. Normally we would dark light that trash can, but since we don't need its spook speed for running on the way back, it's not really worth it. We're going to instant spawn Gooigi, have him go over here. The cutscene is all that matters, that button is fake, so all that matters is Gooigi's right there, and that's going to start the cutscene. Now normally we have to walk up the stairs in order to burst these guys, also nice dab. Normally we have to walk up the stairs, but we can actually burst the first one, so if that one happens to be the one that has the button, we can just get it slightly earlier. We're going to burst these guys because bursting allows us to separate the one who has the button because he never stops spinning, so that just allows us to make sure we know who exactly has the button instead of losing track. And now we're going to do DJ. We're going to basically do the one cycle burst, flash, burst. That's all you need for the one cycle. Grab her, and then once we slam 7 times, we just reflash her. Cool little ping pong strat between Luigi and Gooigi though, where we have them like just about the right distance from each other so that they can regrab slightly sooner than they would be able to regrab normally. We're also going to move down with Gooigi just so that he's in the right position. So that after this boss death animation, we can grab the button. Now right here, the reason we didn't trigger that trash can for spook speed earlier is the same reason why we didn't do it in 4F, and that's because there's a down warp here. This down warp is very annoying because this little railing right here is very easy to goo push onto, and so it's very, very hard to down warp here because normally the game just wants to try to goo push you onto the railing. But you can do it, and it warps you all the way to the elevator, which skips not only that hammer fight, which still has the ghost gates there, but also it skips this fight, which normally triggers if you stand right here on this little disco platform. Normally we skip it by pushing onto this bench and then going around, but we can skip it instead by doing that crazy down warp, and it warps us just barely far enough to not have to deal with that fight. That you wouldn't even know is there if you just skip it. Now for 15F, which is by far the most technical floor in the game, so I'll do my best to try to keep up with explaining everything. So right here, we're going to do another classic plunger cancel, where we're going to pull it, and then we're going to immediately plunger afterwards to be able to move sooner. While Luigi goes through that pipe, we're going to move Luigi up to that door. This floor has by far the most multitasking out of any floor in the game. So right here, we're going to flash him, spawn Luigi. Luigi can slam before Luigi has his thing pulled. We swap over to Luigi mid-slam so that he can get running speed from the hammer, or from the trapper. Push onto here. We're going to drop Luigi, and that's going to push him down here. No false stun animation, by the way. Very, very hard sequence right there. But I'm just gonna gloss over a lot of stuff in this floor because it's very, very, very technical. Perfect key RNG once again. So right here, we're going to be doing a very, very difficult strat for this fight. We're going to startle skip right there. And then we're going to shoot a plunger at this hammer right about here. Or at the Oozer, sorry. This hammer spawns invulnerable just like the one in 11F, so we can just grab him, manipulate where he goes to drag us, and then slam it 140 so that we can perfectly kill both of these Oozers and the hammer. Very, very, very hard to do that. It's a lot harder than it looks, trust me. Now we're going to go into this room. This is probably the most boring room of the floor. It's the only one that doesn't have some crazy trick in it, but it still has a couple of fun techs. So we're going to go in here with Luigi, that way we can despawn him and just make it start rotating immediately. We're also going to rotate this with Luigi. That way we can build up a sprint, despawn Luigi once this thing gets rotated, and then the sprint is going to give us sprint speed to when we go in here, which is just a little bit of time save. Right here, another thing you're going to notice is that whenever we dark light these doors, we're going to be aiming downwards because that extends our hitbox slightly further, which allows us to dark light it sooner. Now right here is another side warp like the one we used in 8F. It's never ever going to be used in any percent, but it's very cool looking because it just kind of works. We're going to push through this laser right here. So how this works is, how the game progresses is it spawns ghosts after the first room, as you saw with the oozers and the hammer. It spawns ghosts after the third room, which is the one we're in, and it spawns them after the last room. However, it checks based on your room, based on whether or not you've pulled the lever to deactivate the lasers and whether or not you've grabbed the key. So if you only do one of those two things, like for example pushing through this laser wall, it thinks, oh, you haven't beaten this room yet, so it's not going to spawn the third ghost fight that spawns after beating the third room. We're also going to vacuum these. Normally, in order to see the lasers, you have to burst them, but if you burst them, a dialog box that spawns by EGAD will stop appearing, and we need that dialog box for this room right here. So we're going to grab these guys, get spook speed from this trapper, which can randomly spawn anywhere throughout the room. Get door storage, which is basically acquired by doing, it's like the same thing we do for ducky storage, and it makes us invincible to the lasers, as I forgot to mention. So we're going to drop Luigi right here. He's going to get destroyed by the lasers, and that's going to trigger EGAD's dialogue. Now, whenever you skip a dialogue box, for some reason, you're able to swap characters whenever you skip it, even if the characters are frozen. So this cutscene that normally happens, what we're going to do is we're going to spawn Luigi, he's going to get frozen by the cutscene, and then we're going to use this dialogue box to swap. And keep in mind, you can't get that dialog box if you burst any of the lasers previously. So that's going to allow us to move during this cutscene right here, which we're normally not allowed to be doing. We're also going to swap as soon as we pull this lever, so that way we can grab the key before the lasers actually deactivate, because you can't grab something if you're not controlling the character who's next to it. Another quick fall cancel, spook speed through this door. Now this is the ghost fight that happens after beating the third room, because this thinks this is the third room we've beaten. We can just Luigi push through it, and since the gate to get to Helen only cares that you have all 4 keys, we can just skip this ghost fight and the final ghost fight to immediately go to Helen Gravely's boss fight. This boss fight is quite long, so I'll just show you only one phase of it, because it's pretty much the same for each phase and how it works. By the way, nice super long cutscene here. I don't know why this cutscene is unskippable. It's another one that doesn't really make any sense. Alright, so right here we're going to drop Luigi right here, and that's going to put him out of bounds. So normally these colored lasers, when Helen drags you into them, it detethers her, but since Luigi is out of bounds, he can't really be dragged into them, so long as he doesn't actually touch them, which is like right here and right here. So she'll try to drag him forwards, and then he'll just get blocked by this invisible wall, as you're about to see. Another thing that we're going to do is we're going to flash burst her, because when you flash burst, she doesn't go into her ugly form, and that way, once you slam her 7 times, she'll go back into the TV and she won't have to reapply her makeup. So right here, grab her. She's not in her ugly form. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Make sure Luigi does not touch the colored laser, otherwise he pops. And right here, she would normally have to reapply her makeup, but since she's already in her pretty form, she doesn't have to do that. Makeup skip saves about 11 seconds if you do it twice in a row. Obviously, it doesn't really matter if you do it for the 3rd time because of the fact that she doesn't have to reapply her makeup the 3rd time because she'll be defeated. But yeah, so that's how the Helen fight works. I'm going to skip the rest of it because it's literally just the same thing each time. And this part is pretty self-explanatory. It's just basically a bunch of startle skips. So we're just going to go straight to here. We're on the roof now, about to fight King Boo. We're going to go drop down here. The game is going to screen warp us back to the top of the screen, and we're going to fall down. So that's going to warp us up, skipping having to climb 2 different ladders and a Mario cutscene. So Mario skip, very, very important. Also very hard. I don't like that skip. Now we're going to start the boss fight with King Boo, which is honestly a pretty underwhelming boss fight compared to Helen Gravely. Helen is at least exciting. We're going to do a tongue skip right here. Normally he has a tongue attack, and if you frame perfectly take damage on those lightning bolts, then you won't have to deal with it. One thing is, we're going to be grabbing these bombs and shooting them as quickly as possible. That's about all there is to save time on for King Boo, apart from right here, where we instantly grab the tongue as soon as we possibly can and start slamming him as fast as we can. Now, phases 2 is pretty much the same as phase 1, so I'm just going to skip past it, along with a very, very lengthy cutscene. And then, so right here for phase 3, if you don't get this bomb shot, you're going to lose 3 minutes or something like that. So it's very, very important that you grab, usually the first one that falls, shoot it at the real King Boo, and then timing stops as soon as we grab his crown. So we're going to slam him 3 more times. Awesome shot right there. Capture King Boo. And then timing is going to stop as soon as the screen turns black after we grab this gem. So right about here. Now I'm just going to skip over to the credits. Obviously, big shout-outs to every single person who contributed clips to this little run. Couldn't have done it without you. Prince Porky, obviously, that is myself, the Paranormal Prince. Shout-outs to Twisted Elf, current world record holder, absolute go to the game. Grove, Aether, a legacy runner. Coopery, a legacy glitch hunter, the Strat Dragon. Mr. Green, the Green Thunder, absolute classic. And then, of course, the horse with no name, very, very important glitch hunter to the game. Also, special thanks to Javen. He helped me time a lot of the individual runs and helped me basically find clips that were slightly faster than other clips. And then, obviously, this whole thing was edited by myself from October 28th to December 30th. Thank you so much for watching the BTT commentary, and I hope you have a good day.